it somewhat larger in life because this is superheroes and they're fighting bad guys and all that stuff. But there's a humanity to it too, because they're even before they put the tights on, there's something very heroic about fighting like an unbearable obstacle, and all your characters have that. Mm-hmm. So is there a deliberate attempt to balance that a little bit better, a little bit more, or is it more like the escape is the more important thing, I guess, for lack of a better?
Kind of the way we do it is, think old Captain Planet, where the bad guys were like the embodiment of the different pollutions. Mm-hmm. That's how our bad guys are. Like each one is the embodiment of a struggle that these patients deal with on a daily basis. So the educational part, when you're actually reading the story, is kind of subtle. But then at the end, we go in an editorial page and go, okay, here's the things we touched on, and here's why, and explain it a little bit deeper.
So you're very much, I'm going to say, the Dr. Seuss approach. Like the darkness is there. Yeah. Don't necessarily. It's not quite so in your face of bad and dark, because that's not what your comics are about. Your comics are about overcoming the odds in a very fun and hopefully fulfilling way.
Right, because we wanted it to appeal to both people who just wanted it because it's a fun story and they like the character, as well as the actual patients.
Yeah,
we wanted to appeal to both.
Yes. So, and obviously being I think probably it sounds like the patients are your biggest audience, or the audience you want possibly the most. Am I wrong on that assumption, or?
So the characters, the characters are meant to, obviously inspire and give the patients their own hero, but we wanted to create awareness for all these different diseases to the broader public. So our book kind of straddles, two things. There's a lot of educational books, like if you want to go learn about AIDS research, there's a lot of comic books that have been done that have just been educational. It's like, this is what AIDS is, this is how it impacts people, this is how many people it impacts. But as far as an entertaining, idea, it's kind of secondary. The educational aspect was more primary. So we wanted to go after something that was like very lighthearted, that you could be entertained by first. And then as you peel back the layers of the onion, you can be like, oh my gosh, there's the 6-foot rule, and that's why it's important to cystic fibrosis. And so, people, I think, shy away from books that beat you over the head, whatever it is. And so we're kind of turned off by that. But if you have something that's entertaining at first, and then you can kind of understand as you read through it a second time, oh my gosh, there's some educational aspect here.
I
looks like you have a question.
No, I always have questions. So it's what I do.
That's the way.
Yeah, no, it sounds to me like from just a storytelling perspective, one of the things you guys are juggling with is the nuance of it, what you show, what you tell. Because again, you have a very clear goal of what you want to do. But obviously, I mean, you also don't want to insult the intelligence of whoever's reading the book either. There's I feel like that's really probably the biggest challenge to writing it, because intelligence is hard, because if you don't want to avoid the issues, but you don't want, like, I think most of us are tired of the grim and gritty, Dark Knight-esque, like you don't want, especially in a comic like this, that's not what you want. No. So it definitely feels like and it'd just be interesting if we could get Donovan's perspective on this too, is what you show and what you tell. Like how much, I imagine, Joe, that this, because you're the one doing the writing stuff, that must be a really interesting challenge for you.
It's unlike any other project that I've done before.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've done like the educational one, like on the AIDS project. I was a letter on one of those projects for like the Cleveland Health something. And, it was very cut and dried. This is the background and the history of AIDS research and why it's impactful and why we need to overcome it, which is great. And then there are always those attempts like at driver's ed, like this is John and John does this and and so I was like, yeah, we don't want to do that, So I embraced 80s and 90s Amazing Spider-Man, and we all agreed that would be a good approach, because it was really lighthearted and fun, and you could pick up a book and not be like depressed by the time you ended up reading it. And ultimately, what Jeremiah and I and Donovan all discussed, we don't want to leave that impression on the reader, especially the patient. We want to give them hope, like you said, and we want to give them a hero to look up to. So while they're dealing with these issues and the villains are the embodiment of the things that they're tackling on a daily basis, we want our hero to be an overcomer. So they have superpowers. They also have an Achilles heel. But, at the end of the day, they're still struggling with whatever it is, whether it's brain cancer or whether it's cystic fibrosis, and that's like, the core of their Iron Man suit that might run out of energy, or if Tony Stark gets it ripped out of his armor, he's just a normal guy or a weakened guy. So we wanted to weave that in, and then also at the end of the story, we want to leave it on an uplifting note, so that you might have this thing that you're battling every single day, and you can still overcome it, because these patients, in the true sense of the word, are superheroes. They're real life superheroes. They're dealing with these diseases every day. It's amazing. And for people that aren't going through it, we have no idea what these people are suffering through on a daily basis. Jeremiah can just give you a little tip of the iceberg as far as like his regimen and all the pills he's taking and everything. So it's inspiring for me to see Jeremiah, for instance, go through all this struggle, and then he still has time to, try to push this forward with this project and impact other patients that are dealing with this, and reach out to all these different institutions and try to get funding. So he is a superhero in my book. And I think that if we brought that to the general public to realize, cystic fibrosis patient dealing with this is Superman in real life, I think that maybe they can relate to it and then embrace cystic fibrosis as a superhero, and pediatric brain cancer as a superhero, and sickle cell as a superhero. So that's the ultimate.